Hello, Savage Flight crew, listeners and viewers and subscribers. I want to make sure we kept moving like I promised. Uh, we are fortunate to have back our great functional health expert and active release technique expert, chiropractic, as well, veteran, the great Dr. Susan Clark. And I'm excited about what we're going to talk about today since so many of us, it's universal to all of us. And that's that great thing called sleep. And in example, like I said, my kids have a baby. That's one way to hit you, right? And then other times you just have people with insomnia, and you have all these various reasons with the load of academics, with the emerging elite athletes, collegiate athletes that, or pro athletes that trying to balance their schedule, right, of promoting and progressing. So that's going to be episode 3 today is going to be about the wonderful world of sleep. So without further ado, hey Doc, how you doing?
Hi, thank you, Coach Savage, for having me on today.
Okay, did you get some sleep?
So I did get some sleep.
Okay, all
Yes,
right, there we
yes. I
go.
came back. I came back from my 30th class reunion at the Air Force
Ah,
Academy. Yes,
okay,
and
okay.
yeah, really want to dive into why sleep is so critical. Most people don't go through a service academy experience, but they literally put you through undue stress so that you learn how to function on low sleep. But
Yeah,
when you're an athlete, sleep is super critical, regardless, and especially in the military space. Obviously, those Navy SEALs are pretty special because they literally learn how to function on low sleep and perform at a high level.
right.
Um, they
Mm-hmm,
are a unique group. Clearly, their genetics are amazing.
mm-hmm.
So, sleep, as far as not just from a recovery perspective, but also from a metabolic perspective, there's a huge link in the nutrigenomic space in understanding these genes and how sleep affects your genetics from a weight gain, weight loss perspective.
Okay.
So some athletes need to, for example, a wrestler needs to cut weight. If they're not getting good sleep, they're not going to be able to cut that weight potentially. So this is why sleep also is very important for your brain function. And oftentimes athletes will notice when they get less sleep, what will happen is their motor sensory, they're not able to do those tasks or those new motion patterns that the
Right.
coach is asking them to do because
Mm-hmm.
they just didn't get enough sleep. They didn't get that recovery. And again, when you sleep at night, you filter out your cerebral spinal fluid. So if you're not getting that quality amount of sleep, which is going to make me dive into what REM sleep and deep sleep is,
Yeah, let's
and
talk
why those
about that. Right.
yeah. So why would you want even to track that? Because obviously we know that sleep is so important. So REM, kind of the rapid eye movement, it takes your ideas and kind of like reorganizes it. Okay. That's the easiest way for me to explain how REM sleep is so important. So during the day, you have events. Um, your brain needs an opportunity to kind of reformulate those ideas at night, and that's that REM
Mm.
sleep.
So that's
Um,
kind of like Control Alt Delete on the computer.
right. So in that sense, if you can't get through getting good REM sleep and having just short-term memory recall the next day, that then also you'll notice a lot of athletes, and that's the difference between the REM sleep and the deep sleep. So think of like REM as kind of like learning those new motion patterns, doing those things that coaches asked you to do, and
Mm.
having it carry over to the next
Okay.
day. Because
Okay.
again, the athlete's thinking about, okay, well, yeah, Coach Savage taught me this new motion pattern. I've got to learn these kind of things. If it's hard to pick up the next day, that means they probably didn't get a good REM sleep.
So with that,
As
with
far
REM, real quick here, Doc, because I know I see a question here now. Would that also be related to when people use the term muscle memory?
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
But muscle memory is actually brain memory because the muscle does not house the memory. It's your brain that tells your body how to function.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Just going
They've
over
proven
tape.
this. I know. So, and deep sleep.
Okay.
So,
Talk to us about deep sleep.
yeah. So when the athlete shows up for practice that day, and clearly they didn't get enough deep sleep, they're sluggish. They can barely do any of the motion patterns you're
Yeah.
asking them to do. And they even say to you, Coach, I feel run down. That tells me they didn't get restorative they're not restoring their bodies, and that's that deep sleep component.
Okay.
So deep sleep is really important. If you feel fatigued that day, it's probably you didn't get enough deep sleep. I typically like patients, regardless of genetics, obviously. I really suggest that you try on your deep sleep to get greater than an hour or more. What I
Or
do
more.
notice,
Okay.
yeah, so here's where it goes back to our first podcast where we talked about inflammation. If I have too much inflammation and I can't get rid of it at night, my deep sleep tends to be less.
Hmm. Okay.
Fascinating, isn't it? So
Right.
these
Right.
are the reasons why you should even care. This is why tracking it is so important because that helps you to gauge how aggressive would I train that day and how I would back off on my training that day. Okay. And then kind of diving into the overall functionality of that athlete that impacts all facets of their health. If you can't think well, you can't move well, do you think you're going to perform at that level that you need to? Probably not. So,
Okay. So I had a question there. So let's use a use case with an athlete, and that athlete, let's say it's one of mine. I gave him speed work, high intensity, some hit work, and they had whatever full recovery still, but it was we were running and working hard and taxing the body as it relates to speed at 6 second and down, right? And we're doing a lot of central nervous system, some eccentric, concentric work. And now it's they go home and for whatever reason, they had four at a high school level AP courses, or they have dual enrollment and they've got all this intensity, or they got to get ready for SAT. And so they got 3 hours sleep, or they just couldn't sleep because they're nervous. Now, that next day, what do you feel is the state of the body, and what would you recommend? They do that next day, since beat up the muscles did a lot of high impact training.
Yeah, I would actually go back to breathing. I would do some high intensity breathing exercises with some yoga, stretch the muscle spindles. I would not
active
do
rest.
Yeah, a little bit more of an active rest. However, it's amazing to me how many, especially with the anxiety levels that athletes experience, some of them respond really well to anxiety. Some of that's actually genetic. Other people, mostly importantly, it's environmental. And so how we respond, and I always tell my athletes and my patients, energy is a finite thing. Where do you want your energy to go to? And it's a training, right? It's a training. If you show up at the Olympics, right? Of course you're going to have anxiety, but it's how you manage that anxiety, right? So, and your perspective and how you gain that perspective is really through slowing down your autonomic nervous system, most importantly, your fight and flight response. So, getting used to learning how to breathe effectively is key. I can't begin to tell you how many times patients stop breathing and then they're like, hey, my muscles are not working really well. Aside from whether or not they got 3 hours of sleep or not. But and
Okay.
their performance goes down. So really breathing and stretching would be the best thing.
Mhm.
Obviously, I wouldn't do any form of and it takes about 2 to 3 days for that athlete's body to get back in sync.
Mhm. Okay.
Usually a 2 to 3 day time frame. So it doesn't mean that the next day after you would go back to high intensity again. You would look at that REM and that deep sleep and really
Mm.
dial in on did we recover or did we not? That would then determine how aggressive you would do that training that
Okay.
day.
So the feedback coming from the data, the feedback coming from the athlete, since in a lot of cases, they may not have a sophisticated solution to say what's going on at the, you know, motor skills or cellular level. So with that
Right.
being said, okay, and I know, oh, we have another question here. Um, okay, so you're in that state and you're breathing and you're doing your breathing exercises. Do you have other recommended solutions that, that you'd advise from a supplemental perspective that would help some of
Mhm.
those situations? For
So,
example,
so to get more sleep from a natural perspective,
well,
protein is
not
the best.
necessarily just get more sleep, right? But uh,
Quality sleep, quality
quality
sleep.
sleep or
Hmm.
addressing what we just said. Because I know this question here basically, coach is saying, we still got to get ready for the meet. We still got to get ready for the game. It's a short week. We know they're going to have to do 2 speed sessions. Is there things that you can recommend for recovery? Is there things you can recommend for repair, right?
Hmm.
And sleep, because you and I know sleep is the best one, right?
Right, right. And so there are a group of supplements that can help
Okay.
with that from
Hmm.
repair and recovery perspective.
Right.
Natural levels of turmeric are very good. Boswellia is another one. Both of those supplements,
Say
there's a
that one more time. Say that
uh,
one again.
Boswellia,
Persuade.
Boswellia.
That's the
Yeah,
one I
both of
always.
those are natural anti-inflammatories. However, with that being said, they are hard on the kidneys. So short term, okay. Long term, I really try, especially when it's herbs, for a
Mhm.
patient to take at least a week off of the month to be off of
Okay.
those anti-inflammatories.
Hmm.
But those are really great. Obviously, fish oil,
Okay.
specifically Hofseth Biocare Amigo fish oil
Say that one
is
more time.
so Hofseth,
Huffs.
Hofseth.
Okay.
Full spectrum fish oil is really what you want to consider. But most importantly, too, is eating some protein in the evening time. There was a new study that came out at the beginning of this year,
Hmm.
specifically on Division I soccer female athletes.
Okay. Right.
And they noticed that having a little protein, about anywhere from 5 to 15 grams of protein before you go to
Hmm.
bed, will absolutely help with muscle repair and recovery. It
Five
will
to
also,
15 grams. Okay.
yeah, so it will also increase your tryptophan, because tryptophan is in protein. And so that tryptophan will stimulate your melatonin, which will allow you to naturally fall asleep.
Mhm.
So
There's that
I do,
turkey. Right.
that's
That's
right, it makes you fall asleep.
during the
So you,
holiday season. Hmm.
right, when
Right.
I have patients supplement with melatonin, that's a short-term thing.
Hmm.
Um, I also, depending upon if their DHEA values are really high, typically I recommend that they look at things like phosphatidylserine
Now,
at
what is
night.
DHA for those
A
who?
DHA is a hormone that's
Hmm.
directly linked to your cortisol patterns.
Okay.
And cortisol is kicked out by your adrenal gland, which sits
Okay.
above your kidneys. And your basically that adrenal gland is in a natural response. That's the guy that kicks in when you're super stressed.
Okay.
So a lot of athletes and a lot of military members have elevated cortisol
Hmm.
at night. The common theme is I can't get my weight under control. I don't feel rested when I
Hmm.
wake up in the morning. My
Okay.
body feels heavy when I wake up. I'm
Hmm.
having a hard time falling asleep at night.
Hmm. Okay.
Those kinds of things, indicate that. So I don't recommend supplementing with phosphatidylserine unless you get your DHEA levels checked, but
Mhm.
melatonin is something safe that you can take for
Okay.
sure.
And
Okay.
is there side effects with melatonin at all?
Very, no.
Okay.
Short term, no. But here's the thing where the areas of the genes, why getting genetically tested kind of helps you have a better 3D view of how you function.
Hmm.
Because if you don't know what your genes say, it doesn't help you with changing your habits
Right.
in
At
your
that
sleep
baseline.
patterns.
Mm.
Right. So knowing your ideal sleep window is one of those.
Hmm.
The best time that you go to bed, and literally they talk about there are four types of people basically, and this comes down to your
Okay. I'm listening.
chronobiology.
Okay.
Uh, you're either a lion, bear, wolf, or dolphin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So wolves really, they stay up all night. A lion is someone that's an early riser, early to bed.
Okay.
A bear is like middle of the road, and then a dolphin is kind of like a little sporadic too, like a bear, but a little unique. There are very few dolphins. Most people
Mm.
are either bears. Most people are bears.
Mm.
Um,
You know, for
wolf,
me, I'm like, well, it might be a dolphin, but
you're a
the
dolphin,
first two you said, I'll get up early in the morning and I'll stay up late. So
right?
which animal is that where you do both?
You're probably a dolphin.
A
You're
dolphin.
probably a dolphin potentially, but
I like that.
um, but you could. I mean, again, you have to kind of like. I highly suggest that you either get up early, go to bed early, or get up late, go to bed
Uh,
late.
uh,
Um, but knowing that time to bed is part of that. So
mm,
there is a circadian rhythm that's natural for you.
right.
And knowing that genetically would be super big as
Hmm.
far as like knowing when to go to bed.
Okay.
Also, to see if you're sleep deprived, if you're sensitive to being sleep deprived, there are some people that have a really hard time on low sleep.
Hmm.
So, some of my patients will come in like, hey, I could totally, if I get more sleep than
Hmm.
say 7 hours of sleep, I notice that I'm not functioning as well. And then there are other patients who are like, oh my gosh, I have to have 9 hours of sleep
Right.
or I don't feel like I function as
Right.
well. That's that genetic piece to
Hmm.
understand. Um, and then deep sleep quality. There's some people that can really get good genetically, have a
Hmm.
better propensity to get better quality deep sleep.
Right.
Knowing if you don't get that, really honing in on that because that really indicates whether or not you're going to need to change how you're doing your recovery from your training.
Hmm.
And obviously, the excessive sleepiness. Some people are just like super, super tired all the time.
Oh.
Uh, some people genetically that it affects them. So there's a genetic variant associated with that. So
Hmm.
it's not just about getting up early and going to bed late, um, right?
Right. Oh,
Um,
yeah. Or you have something like I said, you get interrupted. I mean, use me as an example. I am a light sleeper. If I hear noises around the house, you hear a dog crying, it's 5:30 in the morning. I'm gonna wake up, And so you might have had, we say, man makes plans and God laughs. You might have had a plan on sleeping seven
right.
or eight, and then the next thing you know, phones, not leaving them in the room, things like that, to try to break some of the habits that can necessarily. And a big one for
Well,
me, like I
mhm.
said, a big, yeah, I get mixed communication back on the world of caffeine, right?
Yeah. So there's another
So
gene
is
associated with
caffeine
sleep.
good for you or bad for you?
So,
You
so you
got
know,
anything there? Hmm.
I've got a history of being a competitive cyclist, and competitive cyclists drink a lot of caffeine.
Okay.
And the reason why they do that, when you race at a criterium, you're trying to burn as much fat as possible because by the time you're at the end of the race, I mean, your legs are just burning. So
Mm-hmm.
you want to burn that fat first. Obviously, you
Mm-hmm.
want to try to burn as
Right.
much as you can so that you have basically some glucose stores. So,
Okay.
so I understand why an athlete, from a competitive perspective, wants caffeine, but it would be good for patients to know, like, okay, am I sensitive to caffeine? Can I process
Mm-hmm.
caffeine? So there's a use case example. There
Okay.
is,
Yeah. Talk to me.
obviously
Talk to us.
caffeine sensitivity with sleep
Mm-hmm.
is a big thing. The gene is called CYP1A2. No patient really cares about the gene number or designation. It's just like,
Right.
how does it really affect
Right.
me? So
Exactly.
some people really, so you either, the half-life of caffeine is typically 5 hours.
Okay.
So if I drink caffeine any later than 3 o'clock, it's going to take 5 hours from 3 o'clock until 8 for
Mm.
50% of it to get out of my body.
Oh wow.
I know. So some
Okay.
people, they're a slow, just like when we talk about slow oxidizers, there's people like you eat food and you're like, Jesus, I'm hungry again. I need
Mm-hmm.
more food.
Right.
Yeah, that means you're not breaking down your food. You're not
Mm-hmm.
processing it. The
Right.
same thing is with caffeine.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a slow oxidizer of caffeine, if I and say it takes me 9 hours, now
Mm-hmm.
that's going to keep me up. Now that's going to really affect my circadian
Oh
rhythm.
wow.
I'm
Okay.
not going to get to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to get that restorative
Hmm.
sleep. And then I wake up the next morning and guess what happens? I'm groggy,
Yeah.
right?
Now, is it
So
accumulative as well, as far as you got that 50%, and you say, oh, was it 25?
it takes about 10 hours for
Okay.
caffeine on average to get out of your system,
Okay.
but some people it gets out faster.
Hmm.
Some people it's a lot slower. And
Okay.
knowing that it's a lot slower in the athlete's body really helps, especially my student athletes
Hmm.
know, okay, I've got a really big final. I need to not procrastinate. I need to like study
Right.
ahead of time. And if I'm going to have any caffeine, I want to be up to a certain time
Hmm.
period, and I need to make sure that I can get some restorative sleep. Nothing is worse than going into a final and being exhausted taking the final and knowing that you knew the information, but because you didn't get that restorative sleep, you do crappy on the test.
You mean you procrastinated? That's what you said.
Right,
And tried to
right.
jam.
So, well, we
Now,
want
with
our,
that though,
right.
a
Mm-hmm.
question related to that, because I see another question coming in here, and that's okay. It's saying, okay, that all these drinks out here right now, right? 5 hour shot. Is that good or bad for those who out there, doing those common apps now and they're, cramming everything in, um, to get, the work done in this case, and then or I've
Right.
also seen it at track meets, not on, my runners, but I've seen people go, oh, look, wow, I'm going to give you a 5 hour shot. Now, what's your perspective on those super caffeine drinks for performance? So whether it's, once again, like
So,
you said, it's
so you
brain.
need to know, yeah. So you need to know what your genetics say and how you process caffeine. That's
Hmm.
the first thing. Because
Okay.
if you know that, then you know how to time, if you were going to take some caffeine,
Hmm.
to burn the fat first so that you can, right, get that blood
Right.
glucose, you're
Hmm.
gonna last a little longer in the race. Nothing would be worse than take caffeine. You get a dip and then
Right.
you go out for the race and you tank it.
Your heart is
So
racing, but you're not going anywhere.
correct,
Right.
correct. So
Okay.
caffeine's not a bad thing from a competitive perspective. The other
Mm.
thing caffeine is too, it's a diuretic, right? So it's going to dehydrate you. Um,
Right.
a lot of these athletes, especially in the track world, I mean, they're out in the sun, it's super
Right.
hot, they're sweating like pigs. Um, so that type of sweating a lot,
Hmm.
obviously, and they're not replenishing it, they're going to get
Hmm.
further dehydrated, which could cause a headache or cause poor performance
Hmm.
because of that. So that's why it's really important to kind of dial in and how
Yeah.
do I process that
Oh,
caffeine?
this is good. This is great. So, as we're coming to a conclusion here, so we've studied the inflammation piece in the last episode, and now we're focused on sleep. Could you, for the viewers and listeners and subscribers out there, give a good summary on one, the emerging elite, the athletic, and as well those who just care about having good health? Your thoughts, pretty much summarize, what do you feel the best approach to be the best version of yourself, and have a growth mindset so that you watch and monitor and are aware and move forward when it comes to sleep?
Yeah, so uh, really the reason why we're talking about sleep too is we're in this inflammation overview.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not dialing into your habits, if you don't have your genetics, obviously, um, and not understanding your genetics, it really doesn't give you a real playing ground to really understand, okay, what's going to work best for me, what's not going to work best
Mm-hmm.
for me. However, some people naturally can kind of figure, without even having your genetics, can kind of figure some of that out. Obviously, if you've had some blood work and they've started looking at some of your inflammatory markers, that's a real window to understand, okay, I got a little bit more inflammation going on. Okay, let me
Mm-hmm.
look at one component that feeds into inflammation, that's sleep. So
Okay.
if you're tracking your sleep, I think a good starting point, even without any testing, is really having like an Oura ring or a Fitbit
Mm-hmm.
or a Garmin that's testing. You're looking at your REM sleep, you're looking at your deep sleep,
Mm-hmm.
you're tracking the training that you're doing, you're looking at your recovery.
Okay.
What does that look like? And knowing that, knowing what to look for in REM and deep really gives you an idea if you're tracking it consistently.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, maybe I need to change things up because clearly I'm not getting an hour of deep sleep.
Right.
And
Right.
that goes back to habits. What time, am I on my devices an hour before I'm going to bed?
Mm-hmm.
Am I completely like, do I have a routine where
Mm-hmm.
I'm unwinding at the end of the day? Am I procrastinating on my schoolwork so that I'm super stressed out and
Right.
I'm definitely staying up until 11, 12 o'clock at night? And then I got to get up at 6 a.m. for a
Right.
practice. Um,
Okay.
it's really kind of where do I, and every patient is so different.
Mm-hmm.
Where do I think that I am what I call self-sabotaging myself
Yeah.
in my human performance?
Mm-hmm.
That would be the good starting point for any
Okay.
athlete.
Oh, excellent. So essentially come up with your own custom high performance habits, and that you can track the progress of getting there, like so that you're whatever improving. Like I tell my athletes, 1% a day. That's really, you can just shoot for that. Don't try to, make these big drastic swings. Something that you can develop in 2 weeks, and then you stick with
Right. Yeah, stick to it. The thing that I find is a lot of people have a hard time pinpointing exactly where their less than successes are that are
and
self-sabotaging
that's
themselves.
that baseline, right? And
Right. That's where that coach comes in handy. That's where that functional nutritionist comes in handy. That's where that counselor helps them.
and that
You know,
logging. Hmm.
yeah. So, and start with, when I give patients exercises, I only give them a max of two. And the reason why is because I don't want them to feel overwhelmed and I want to hit bullseye. I want to make sure that whatever I'm giving them is going to get them to that
Right.
next level,
Think big,
right?
do small. Right.
Think big, do small. Mm-hmm.
Make that progression. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. That's it. That's your guys. Well, awesome. And right now, I'd love to continue, but I know you have big trade shows coming up, and we have some things that we have to get to with our ventures that we're doing. And so what I want to do is I want to thank you, and everyone get ready. We're going to leave it as a surprise, episode 4, which will be coming later.
Next.
And we'll let you know what the topic is. But I want to thank you again, Doc,
No,
for
thank you.
being with us on the Master Series.
Sounds good. Thank you,
And
sir.
signing out, viewers, listeners, say goodbye, Doc.
All right. Bye.
And we'll see you on the next flight.
Okay.